Today we're going to be looking at some of the most legendary creatures in Dungeons & Dragons. I just got this set of Gargantuan Skinny Minis from Dungeon in a Box, so we're just going to unbox them and casually talk about some of the coolest creatures in D&D. So let's get into these legendary encounters. First thing we have here is an Ancient Black Dragon. These guys look really tough. They shoot out acid. Not fun to deal with. Coming in next is Tiamat. This is the evil queen of dragons. It's a draconic god with 5 heads. Kind of like a Hydra on steroids. Really powerful. Next up, this is a bronze ancient dragon. These guys are really cool. They're sociable, they're aquatic, and definitely a little bit of a more positively aligned dragon. Alright, next up we have a more in-depth dragon set here. It's not just the ancient dragon. It also has the young versions as well. This is a brass dragon. And it's double cased. Ooh. This is the ancient brass dragon. Very cool. Note the wings, how they're all connected. And then we have the younger versions. This includes like the young adults and the wormlings. Very cool. Alright, next up is an ancient gold dragon. The gold dragons are seen as the highest breed of the metallic dragons. These guys breathe fire. They are really good spellcasters. Typically the wizards of dragons. Alright, we have a sapphire ancient gem dragon here. If I can get it open. The gem dragons are really cool. They're all of neutral alignment, so they're not like good or evil. They have their own personal motivations. The sapphire in particular likes to live in the The sapphire dragon likes to live in the Underdark. They are stunning and really cool. Gotta love me some psychic gem dragons. This next one is the amethyst dragon. Now the amethyst dragon is probably my favorite gem dragon. They're very cool. They're purple. They're psychic like the rest of the gem dragons, and these guys have a singularity breath. Their breath weapon, instead of being an element, is literally a black hole that they crush and shoot out gravitational energy to attack their foes. Very nice. Next we have the topaz dragon. These guys are interesting. I have an entire video on these guys. You should check that out. But Cole's notes, they're associated with death and decay, and they're kind of like the Addams family, but dragons. Next up we have a crystal dragon. Now the crystal dragons often get mistaken for white dragons, and the reason is because they shine the same color. And when you're up there in the snow and the mountains, it's not always easy to tell who's who. But of course, they have all of these floating horns on them. So if you get close enough to see that, number one, you're probably too close, but number two, you can tell that they're a little bit more agreeable than a white dragon. Then I think the last one that I have in this set is going to be the emerald dragon here. I don't know as much about the emerald dragons as I do the rest of the gem dragons. That said, they look just as cool, and they're a fun little creature to have more interesting encounters with. Instead of the green dragon who's always just trying to gain power and get kind of some more self-motivation, the gem dragons might have some more interesting motivations. They might have their own goals that don't necessarily put them in the party's way. Alright, next up we have a frost giant. Pretty self-explanatory. Giant dudes that are made of and with ice. At least in this guy's case. Storm giants. Storm giants are the strongest and biggest of all giants. They have command over lightning. Honestly, with the giants, you could also just use these as gods, which is always nice. He's got kind of a Zeus flair to him. Next, we have a Zarutan. These guys are cool. They're basically walking islands. This is definitely like a little small for what a Zarutan should be. So it's either like a small baby Zarutan, or maybe you have this off in the distance. Next is a Tarrasque. The Tarrasque is kind of like the Godzilla of Dungeons and Dragons. They sleep under the ground. They wake up every, who knows, hundreds of years. and they just kind of destroy everything in sight and then disappear. Next up we have a Cloud Giant. Cloud Giants are a lot of fun. They are a little bit more magical than the rest of the giants, and I believe they are more adept at building things. Similar to the stone giants, but don't quote me on that. Next we have Orcus. Orcus is a demon lord. Now the demon lords are basically equivalent to some minor deities. They're very powerful, and they can command pretty much anything that's less powerful than them in the abyss, or they died. Orcus used to be a human mage, and when he woke up in hell, he said, you know what, I'm just going to take over this place, and somehow he did it. So I believe this is called a Neolithid. We're going to double check here. Not all of them have the names written down, but this one certainly does. Well, you can't really see it, but yeah, a Neothelid. This is what happens when you have a Mind Flayer that doesn't find a host. If the tadpole grows to be too big, then it starts to become this mindless creature that just eats whatever it can. Now what's funny is these are actually seen as really bad for Mind Flayers because they are mindless and don't have a host. You can't read their thoughts, and because of that, they're almost undetectable to the rest of the Mind Flayer colony. The Elder Brain Dragon. So these creatures are relatively new to my understanding, and they are what happens when an Elder Brain, or basically the head honcho of a Mind Flayer, takes over a dragon. They basically have the abilities of both, which make them terrifying, and they still have control of an entire Mind Flayer colony. Something that I wouldn't wish upon most people. Next up is a Purple Worm. These guys are just giant underground tunneling creatures. Anytime you see giant underground caves, it's probably due to them. Alright, moving on to a giant walking statue. This reminds me of the Dark Souls video game where there's a giant statue that was fighting you. I don't think that there's an actual stat block for this. Normally, it's just a really cool construct. You could use this as a giant knight or anything really. Fire giants. These guys are cool. You can find them in volcanoes, in the Plane of Fire, all sorts of places. They are really good at crafting. Think of them like Hephaestus. Alright, we have an Astral Dreadnought here. Now once again, I think that some of these are a little bit small for their actual representations. Astral Dreadnoughts are giant space creatures. They like to basically scavenge around and eat what they can. You'll see them take out Spelljammers, giant asteroids, and sometimes even smaller planets, I believe. Alright, next up we have a Dragon Turtle. Dragon turtles are the closest thing to a dragon, I would say, that are not actually dragons. What can I say about them? They live underwater. They have all sorts of interesting powers. Sometimes they have lightning or water associated with their abilities, and sometimes they just don't like civilization. You will find them destroying ships. And the last thing in this set is a Elder Phoenix here. This thing is really beautiful, and definitely going to be used in my games. Well, that's everything we got in this box. Thank you so much for watching, and I will, of course, break down these in further adventures and show you the rest of it. We have 2 more boxes coming.